Okie dokie. Well, because Next Fest was at the beginning of the month, I covered a lot of recent demos, but in the remainder of the month, there was a few cool things I wanted to talk about, so here are some late February demos you might have missed. A little side note, this round of demos had a bit more strobing lights than average. I'll try to edit around it, the most intense stuff at least, but just a brief warning. First, Barricade, developed and published by Sock House Studios. Barricade is a terrific concept. Let's take Nazi zombies, give it a retro PC paint job, and focus more on the barricades we build. Reminding me of the years I waited for Fortnite to come out and suddenly get a last-minute redesign, stacking up things and nailing them to walls in the initial time given is pressure-filled and pretty fun, and feeds a special craft things from trash hole in my heart I didn't know I had. Afterwards, you must try to restore them while fending off swarms of monster, sewer creature, demon, zombie things. The strategizing around items is fairly difficult, and the restricted area is also pretty restricted. But I suppose that was intended, at least for the demo so far. I'm wondering if there will be any levels in the future that let you buy more furniture, because I went through that super fast. But that does seem to be a purposeful pressure point, preserving your barricaded items and the high scoreboards that come from a severely restricted situation. Barricade is well worth taking a look at, and the time of release is still to be determined. Developed and produced by Phoenix Studios Pty Ltd, Office Fight had enjoyable music and a room puzzle format. The goal of the game is to incentivize your coworkers from beyond the grave to battle each other to death. Using plants, office objects, and more to piss off people you used to work with, it's actually quite enjoyable to sit back and invoke some chaos and then watch them viciously attack one another. I like the art direction, and it's nice to see projects with a tighter scope and concept executed really well. I enjoyed the mechanics and object throwing interface, and it made me miss the old times of liberal ragdoll usage in games. Office Fight is due to come out soon. Optilusion, developed and published, While Waiting sports a cute art style and a seemingly benign premise initially. One of the most, is this a British game company games I've played in a while, and no, they're not British. The pleasant While Waiting has more than a few tricks up its sleeve. I enjoyed this a lot when I began and slowly saw little hints to there always being more to do while you wait. From secret games to situations you can get into that are absolutely a trap, it's up to you in each bite-sized experience whether you want to wait, find something to entertain yourself, or get up to some mischief. There was a certain scenario that made me utter out loud, "Good Lord, get me out of here," but I had truly brought the suffering down upon myself. With a promise of over 100 situations, While Waiting is a game about a whole lot more than waiting, with a release date still to be determined. Battlefall, State of Conflict, is created and produced by Kyoto Video Game Concern. The art styling and voiceover work is of especially fun and engaging quality. This being a demo, I must say I hope the campaign has a more gradual build in difficulty, or maybe it's just that I have no clue as to how I should min-max my army to win. But after the initial tutorial, the level given was super difficult, given that I had no clue what the specific best case applications were for almost all the units. It is implied that you should be doubling or tripling down on certain producers to properly meet the challenges, but I never discovered a proper strategy. There is the classic control plus number to assign groupings, which made me feel the need to play with classic strategies of Command & Conquer or StarCraft. But there were certain things, including Steam labels, that brought up the term auto-battler, resource gathering that is automatic, and the way you deploy base units is certainly interesting, as well as some upgrade-producing units that take some cues from idle game design. There's a bit of a difficult design around selecting certain types of units, but it is an intriguing mix and did push me to somewhere around 4 attempts to beat the demo. I think there is something very captivating there, and the right balance of auto-battler, idle game leveling, and real-time strategy, I could see a very interesting experience arise. I hope the world and campaign are just as engaging because the voices are a delight, as well as the art style, and watching my units obliterate the enemy army was pretty cool too. Battlefall, State of Conflict is coming soon to early access. Relax in Space is developed and produced by Lucky Cog Studios, and is absolutely fascinating. With a beefy hardware requirement to run, Relax in Space delivers a tech demo with heart. Placed inside of a museum experience, it pushes a spirit of resilience, independent art, and collaboration. I spent more time going through this demo than I had any right to, but the rendering techniques and maths at work were absolutely engrossing to me. Upfront about just trying to explore new abilities of Unreal Engine 5, it sports numerous assets, renders, and other art that are free or open source. I'm curious about where Relax in Space will go over the years, and I'm sure its makers feel the same way. Inspiring and thoughtful, it pushes one to wonder, dream, and believe in what games will do in the future, and what creatives and programmers of all sorts will harness out of this next stage of game engine. I don't know if many others will find Relax in Space as cool as I do. I could probably talk my friends' ears off about its contents, and I wish I had even more explicit explanations of some of its rendering and shader math and techniques. It is a meal for those that have a curious mind to computer graphics or the renderings of space objects and anomalies. All I can say is I hope it to galvanize interest in the field and that many eyes see what I have seen in it. Relax in Space has a planned release yet to be announced. Developed and published by Otadanku Productions, Fragmented World is a puzzly first-person experience. After a technical difficulty or two and an awkward soft lock, I mean, these are demos being played their first few days, I shouldn't judge too harshly. It possesses a mental health narrative spin on puzzle gaming that makes me remember that PS1 game IQ Intelligent Cube with a Q for some reason. It contains some raw but interesting rendering, not always beautiful, but you can see something visceral there. After going through a bit too much of a runway before letting me play, and a depression message that is probably a little on the nose for some, Fragmented World is primarily made up of two mechanics: room combining puzzles and laser puzzles, as well as a few jump scare adjacent moments, but nothing too egregious. I have played through quite a few middling puzzle games recently, but this game held my interest much longer. Still some rough edges in some of the puzzles, like the room combining collision friction is a little too touchy, but I really like the laser puzzles and want to see if that's going to be expanded on a lot more. There's a sense that the narrative is doing more work than initially expected, with a room puzzle that seemed like I might be role-playing as a laser puzzle inside the laser first person, like a mouse in a maze experiment, you being the light, which narratively could be very cool. Fragmented World has the seeds of some puzzle mechanics that I think could go places, and hope to see more from Otadanku Productions. It is planned to be released sometime this year. Developed and published by Savannah Developments, able to ask suspects questions either by mic or typing, I could see this game making some Twitch stream rounds. It made me excited to see what the limits of the technology was, and the question of will there be a VR version wasn't far from my mind either. The music is as you would expect from a detective experience, and I liked my moments sitting and teasing out clues with the light rain pitter-pattering on my office window. A true gumshoe experience. I will say it's a bit difficult to pick up on clues without just giving each suspect the third degree, trying to force reactions and truths out of them, but I guess that's kind of what interrogations are. There could be a bit better tutorializing on some of the interactions, but I made my way through it nonetheless. Verbal Verdict is a demo for anyone that thought LA Noire could have expanded on its mechanics in a more engaging way, and those who love giving the third degree. It's set to go into early access sometime soon. Urban Jungle, developed and produced by Kylik Games, is right up the alley of fans of unpacking or similar casual experiences, and just the right balance of casual and score-based gaming. At first I thought it would be a more scoreless experience and super cozy with no real stiff mechanics at work, but the way the score mechanic is implemented is far more engaging than I initially thought it would be. Obviously there's no real incentive to do things other than use the min-max strategy, but there's still fun there, and I'm curious to see if later levels will expand on these mechanics a little bit more. I loved being able to chill for a second and learn some plant names, filling rooms with an overwhelming amount of greenery, finding the best spot for each plant while I repeated its name like a weirdo. Urban Jungle is a lovely, calming experience slated to release this year. Developed and published by Brooklyn's Moving Pieces Interactive, Shoulders of Giants is a very interesting third-person action-adventure heat-death of the universe roguelike experience. Taking control of a sentient frog that pilots on top of a semi-intelligent robot, you have 2 sets of moves according to which character you are currently wielding. Backed by a team of other sentient animals, the game can inspire thoughts of the cast of Star Fox fairly fast. And honestly, that is one of my favorite things about the game. Building up extra special moves found in levels that are entirely separate sets for frog and robot, I ran down baddies with a pocket dimension municipal trash truck, headshot evil creatures while 50-50ing a rail on a snowboard, and summoned a phantom dimension shoe to stomp upon my enemies. The standard moveset is fulfilling, but the specials are clearly the highlight. I'm sure there's a lot I'm missing mechanically, in the leveling system, and the overarching game goal of defeating what seems to be offline procedurally generated planets. And also, I didn't spend too much time looking at upgrades, but the idea of sentient animals battling the heat death of the universe is pretty intriguing, and quite cool. From an independent studio, they certainly have my attention, and even though the rendering lacks a professional sheen with specular lighting a little too hot for my taste, I don't know, I'm not a graphics guru. I like this, and atop of all that, they also have another 2 games in the works, one of which, named Entropy Survivors, is with the same characters and world setup, but instead repackaged as a survivor-like. And I'm not quite sure if I've ever seen this before. Just reuse most of a game to create a different genre of experience. I think I admire it, and it makes a lot of sense. It would be one thing if either of these games felt lacking, but instead it feels thrifty and smart. An indie developer group making the most out of the assets and IP they have. It also doesn't hurt that I like their Star Foxian thing going on. Both these games are up to 4-player co-op, and my only gripe about that is I wish we could all be the different animals instead of all having to be the frog. As far as the Entropy Survivors game, it's good. It takes the survivor structure and makes them a bit more of a level experience. I just mentioned earlier this month about another multiplayer survivor-like, Gatekeeper, that they were bringing up a good point that the genre was ripe for exploration, co-op being the big one. And here we are, someone pushing the ball even further. Now I will say I wish the screen UI was a little less crowded in Entropy Survivors, as well as I think it would be nice to have an alternate rendering style for Entropy. Maybe a slight toon shader or something. Just change up the visual style a little bit to set it apart from seeming so identical to Shoulders of Giants. But nonetheless, I enjoyed my experience with both, and I hope they have some sort of narrative plans to accompany their delightful bipedal animal hyper future. Shoulders of Giants and Entropy Survivors are slated to come out later this year. Lumina Veil is developed and produced by Hamster Cafe. Most of these demos, I don't read the descriptions before jumping in, so my experience was certainly influenced by that. Serving a lower budget independent studio experience at the get-go, initially I believed I was dealing with a stock assets experience, but the game is put together in a way that I persisted. The level was manageable and referential to horror classics in a way I was intrigued by to see where it went. Especially because once I found a weapon, I could easily defeat the zombies, which took away the baddie avoidance sensation I usually get from survival horror games that are brutally unbalanced to scare you. The health packs were plentiful, and the number in the top corner with the eye icon seemed fine, though indecipherable. I also enjoyed that at one point in the demo, you go back to where it started, an area that initially you may believe to be a canned experience that you aren't supposed to revisit, but instead, once all other options were exhausted, I went back, owning on the zombies I once fled from and found the gatekeeping item I was seeking. I escaped and promptly died in a cutscene. This is when a game inside of a game meta-narrative takes over. Certain aspects like the eye icon on screen and some other mechanics begin to make sense. And though that is interesting and no doubt has my attention, I wonder what the hook is now. Before I thought it was an approachable low-budget survival horror game that was better designed than I had expected with some heavy inspirations of Silent Hill. But now, with the game inception going on, I wonder too many things. Normally, I walk away from a demo understanding more about the genre or the vertical slice or the gameplay or whatever, but this, I leave knowing nothing. Will we play more of the horror game? Is the psychological horror streamer sim? Will I care about view count, or was that just to pull you in at the beginning to keep you guessing? I don't know any of these answers. I normally don't talk about games that I'm unsure of and middling on, but Lumina Veil is interesting and well made. I just have no clue what's in store for the rest of the experience. But maybe that's the intention, in which case, they did a perfect job. However, it is at the cost of undercutting the demo's experience. if I don't have at least a little bit more of an idea of what the larger game loop or experience will be. What's gonna go down? Are you a one-shot horror narrative experience? Will there be streamer sim mechanics I care about? Will there be other video games we play? Am I in a perfect blue situation? Guess I have to wait to find out. Lumina Veil's release date is to be announced. Tiny Connections is developed and produced by Short Circuit Studios. Beautiful music and aesthetically pleasing, Tiny Connections is a casual puzzler. While playing, I think of my favorite minigame, the BioShock hacking puzzle, which I loved, but it seemed like most people I have spoken to did not. Tiny Connections is a much more in-depth and developed idea behind that construct, pushing you through time limits and specific tool pieces to expand and connect color-matched pieces in a grid system. It's solidly built and was a pleasure to play, always letting me know I could easily waste my days zoning out into the perfect routing solution to the puzzle in front of me. People may talk ill of the BioShock plumbing puzzle, but this will surely be better received given its thoughtful complexities, ramping difficulty, and beautiful execution. Tiny Connections is due to come out sometime this March. Bonefield, developed and produced by Red Rock GS, is another game in the emerging genre of bodycam horror, even adopting the moniker as its post-colon subtitle. This being a demo, there were some bumps, like the intro having no skip and no settings, as well as the beginning outside of the house area got pretty chuggy even on my fancy graphics card. But once inside the house, things began to run smoothly, and tension ramped up extremely fast as I inched around the area, remembering immediately that I do not do well in high-pressure environments, and it possesses gameplay that reminds me of the interesting game from the way back days, Enemy Zero. Bonefield did scare me more than a few times, but I'm easily scared and have a weak constitution, and eventually I froze out of fear and just waited. The first time I interacted with the creature, I just freaked out and emptied my clip, and the next time, and the time after that. I'm interested in how they plan to evolve the gameplay, and if there will be any incentive for me to move around the house more instead of my super effective and advanced frozen in fear technique. If you have an interest in the emerging bodycam genre, or just an intense horror experience, I recommend taking a look. Bonefield Bodycam Horror is slated as coming soon. Starting the August before, developed and published by Silly Little Games, I had very little expectation. But once I found a tape in the bedroom to play and started tossing out crumpled pieces of paper in the room, I began to realize what an excellent framework just cleaning a room can be for all sorts of gameplay and narrative devices. From secret messages left behind to heart-aching trinkets of long-past memories, I played this demo a lot. It might be because to run into a kindred spirit through their work is kind of a new experience to me. Music selection that made me think of the phrase Sufjan Stevens universe, and them making me think of the game Night in the Woods seconds before they just flat out have a Night in the Woods sticker in the room. I was kind of a smitten kitten. Even with some rough edges and demo problems, I couldn't care less. Some of those bumps I ran into were some object assertion issues, placement got a little buggy at times, and I could really do with separate audio sliders for sound effects and music in the options. At one point, I have to interact with painting a wall, and these darn boxes were in my way and a little bit torturous. But nonetheless, I'm a sucker for mundane tasks with deep emotional undercurrents, and the August before is serving just that. From getting emotional more than a couple times to the simplicity of taking unpacking and reversing the game mechanic, I really respect what Silly Little Games did here, and I gotta say, there's nothing silly about it. The August before is slated to be coming soon. Well, that's it for the end of February demos. As you know, if you have any recommendations, inspirations, salutations, feel free to reach out. If you think I'd love or hate something, I wanna know. This has been Fib Likley and Play Games. People think about how much time they spend playing them, but what you should really do is think about how much time people spend creating them. Thousands of hours to bring their dreams to a screen in front of you, and all you gotta do is press start.